Good afternoon in New York and North America's and Canada's East Coast. Good morning in Texas and California. Good evening in Germany and the rest of Europe, Iraq and Africa. And welcome whatever time of day or night for you who are joining us from all corners of the world. I'm Yael Danieli, founder and executive director of the International Center for Multigenerational Legacies of Trauma, ICMGLT for short. Thank you for joining our webinar, Yazidi Generations, a Decade After the Last Genocide. This International Center for Multigenerational Legacies of Trauma webinar is held in advance of 3 August 2024 commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the beginning of the ISIL genocide of the Yazidi people. A cultural and historical introduction of the Yazidi people by Yazidi international professional experts will be followed by international experiential experts. Genocide victim survivors at home and in the diaspora will share their experiences, current challenges, and insights, also as men, boys, women, and girls during and after the genocide, and a call for reparative justice for current and future generations. This webinar would not have happened without the consistent work of the ICMGLT's Yazidi Working Group, ably co-chaired by Zirak Hamid and Dr. Michelle Sanders. Our thanks also go to our generous interpreters, Peshkafti Tariq Shokri and Saman Salim Joma. For interpretation, please click the 3 dots in the bottom line, find interpretation, and click on your choice of Arabic or English. Your moderator, I am a clinical psychologist, traumatologist, victimologist, and psychohistorian. I have devoted much of my career to studying, treating, writing about, and preventing lifelong and multi-generational impacts of massive trauma, to ensuring victims' rights, to the rights of future generations, and to reparative justice. My concept of psychohistory views history not only as a series of dates and events, but as we live it, as it is lived by us today, every day, shaping the guiding meanings of our lives. Our first speaker is Bazad Haider. Unfortunately, for circumstances beyond his control, Dr. Mahmoud could not be with us today, and in his stead, Bazad Haider kindly stepped in. An engineer by profession, Bazad is an advocate for his people, writing in local newspapers and magazines about Yazidi religions, culture, and history. He has created a YouTube channel where he invites Yazidi experts to decide topics related to Yazidi history and religion. I hope, Bazad, that you will include the recording of our webinar on your YouTube, indeed. Our second speaker is Shireen Kalo, a Yazidi mother of 2. Shireen lives in Germany. She is a writer, poet, and researcher who has published a collection of short stories in Arabic and a book about the Yazidi Genocide on August 3rd, 2014 in English. Shireen has a BA in English and is pursuing an MA in English literature. She is fluent in Arabic, Kurdish, German, and English. Our third speaker is Dawood Murad Qatari, a Yazidi born in Hatara, a village near Mosul. Dawood is a teacher and researcher who has authored 48 collections of works related to Yazidi genocide, Lalish Temple, and campaigns and fatwas against Yazidis during the Ottoman Empire. He can certainly take the whole webinar, but he is humbly just giving us a window into his expertise today. Dawood has an MA in modern history and is the head of studies and research at the Lalish Cultural Center in Kurdistan, Iraq. Our fourth speaker, who will join us shortly, is Shireen Kudida, a survivor of the ISIS attack against Yazidis on August 3, 2014. Shireen was living in Sinjar, Iraq, and was captured with her family. Shireen was in captivity until February of 2017, when she made a daring escape. She is an activist who shares her personal story of captivity. Having earned a BA in business management, Shireen plans to continue for a master's and doctoral degrees in this field. Fifth is Saif Mito, a survivor of the ISIS attack against Yazidis on August 3, 2014. Saif was living in Kocho, Kurdistan, and was captured along with his family. After 2 years in captivity, he ultimately escaped. Saif is currently studying chemistry and has written a book about his experiences. A recipient of the Diana Award in 2018, he has a Facebook page that supports Yazidis living in refugee camps. I hope that, if you will share in the chat your Facebook, so other people can visit you there. Last but not least is Haider Elias, a globally renowned expert on Yazidis. Haider travels worldwide to advocate for Yazidis. Haider is the co-founder and former president of Yazda, a Yazidi NGO, and the co-founder of Nadia's Initiative, an NGO headed by Yazidi survivor Nadia Murad. Haider has served as a translator and cultural advisor for the United States government in Iraq. Haider is a member of the advisory council of the ICMGLT, as are Dr. Michelle Sanders and Zirak Hamid, the co-chairs of our working group. We have 2 hours for the webinar. Each of our panelists will speak for about 8 minutes. Following an interchange among us, I will open the floor to question or brief comments from the virtual audience. We will then conclude with quotes last words. Please use the chat function and we'll do our best to respond to as many as we can. Feel free to direct your question to a particular panelist or to the full panel. I hope you're feeling as honored as I do to open this panel. I now have the pleasure to offer the screen to our first speaker, Bazad. Bazad, the screen is yours.
Good morning, or good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for this invitation. I know it was on short notice, and this topic may sound a bit simple, but it is very crucial and important and with regard to the Yazidi philosophy. I mainly focused on specific symbols that I will share with you. And after the Q&A session, we will try also to answer your questions, and I will try to be very specific and brief and try to finish in 8 minutes. And I can share my screen, right? So I'll be sharing my screen, and let me know whenever you can see it.
We see it now.
So I'm calling my session the Yazidi religion as a philosophy and history. Maybe I won't go so far with regard to history, but through history, we're able to understand the philosophy. That's why I mentioned the word history. And we won't have specific dates or numbers, but I will mainly focus on the philosophy that I perceived or I understood. And of course, everyone will have their own perspective with regard to research, history, science, or religion. Let's go to the first slide or first page. So first, the outline. I will refer to a few holy books related to Yazidis, and I will refer to some religious texts. And I will mention a few names that refer to the origins of the Yazidis and the history of the Yazidis. And also I will refer to a few symbols related to Yazidis. And I will speak also about what can be called Khazin or righteous people in the Yazidi or Yazidism. And I will speak also about some consistencies or things that are important to Yazidis. So there is Mashaf Rash, what's called Mashaf Rash as a book, or one of the holy books, or light books, or sun book. Each one is interpreted differently. So some call it like Mashaf Rash or black book or light book. And the first part talks about Antiponia, which describes the 7 angels and identify the place or the role of Taos Malak or the peacock angel. And we have cosmology, where it explains the creation, how the world was created. So first it speaks about Taos Malak and then goes to the creation, to the story of creation. And then speaks about anthropogonia, which speaks about the creation of humans after the descendants of Taos Malak to earth. And here it has different dimensions. And here we will be speaking about some symbols related to Yazidism. And Ghazal Majidi also had a session or a lecture in Germany, and you can watch it on YouTube as well. We have another book. It's called Al-Jalwa book. So it is not the holy book, but it is an explanatory book, and it has also some recommendations. So we can call it like reverence book or veneration book. And it speaks about Sheikh Hassan, because Sheikh Hassan is an essential figure in Yazidism. So it is like a divine figure for the Yazidism. So as divine figure is called also a Sun Sheikh, and we call him also Sheikh Hassan. So one book written by Sheikh Hassan, another book which is a revelation book that speaks about the creator and the creation and the reincarnation. Let's go to another important point. So where do we get the philosophy of Yazidism? We get it from the text. From the text and verses. I have more than 100 religious texts. And based on what I heard from Qawwals, or those who recite religion, we have more than 300 texts, religious texts or verses, or maybe 365 as numbers of days of the year. So they are divided into three parts. One is like mythical books, which speaks about the story of a creation that we haven't seen, and also stories related to death, the things that we cannot see. So like the things that maybe it's not that easy for human mind to perceive. So that's why we are saying mythical. Well, it's not like a lie, but this is the name that we use it. And the other one is ritual texts. For example, Al-Kharqa text, which is related to one of the important pieces of cloth to the Yazidis. And it speaks about the different symbols of the Yazidis, of the Yazidism. And also Al-Kharqa was mentioned in different religions. And they say that even Jesus Christ wore that piece of cloth. But still, it's a bit controversial. And even Yusuf or Joseph and Moses wore this piece of cloth. And they call it also a prophecy piece of cloth, which we call kharqa. And we have also verses that speak about goodness or good deeds, diseases, and maybe some recommendations. So these are the texts that we were able to collect or compile. And when we listen to those verses, are they ritual? Are they mythical? So through those texts and through these books, we can understand the philosophy. Let's go to the origins of the Yazidism. And there will be a chapter that will be shared by Shireen. So Shireen will be speaking about the Yazidi feasts or Eids or events. And those events or those feasts or Eids are the ones that explain the beauty of our religion. And the most important one is the Yazidi New Year, which is always in April. And in that feast, we color the eggs. And I will leave that to Shireen. There are some rituals that may sound strange. For example, removing the fur and what we call Malik Miran Tawaf. It is very ancient. Yes, there are many things or many rituals that we practice, but we don't know how ancient they are. And there are some other practices or names that show how ancient we are. Names that we use normally, but they have a lot of historical meanings. For example, Hawariya. We all know Hawaris. So they are the remains of Hawaris or Mayanyun in Al-Hadar areas or Mosul and Ashur or Assyrians. And we have Hatariya, or now we call them Khatariya. And also the other remains of other people. There are some other symbols that show how ancient the Yazidi religion is. The things that we see on the walls of the Lalish temple, but unfortunately, the restoration or renovation of Lalish temple, they didn't take into consideration the historical dimensions, and accordingly, they've removed some of the important symbols, some of the ancient symbols. And unfortunately, the person or persons who have done this, they didn't return to the important references in order to understand that those symbols should have remained. And one of the important symbols is the serpent, the bird, and the curve. Or for example, we have the star and the cross and the circle inside our circle. And those things can be explained maybe by reading a book. It's called Golden something like Golden Pills or Habbat al-Dhahabiyya by Shandi Barani. And in addition to, by the way, in addition to the symbol of the scepter, and after knowing the important symbols and important books and verses to this, let's go to the divine revelations. Yazidism rely on those revelations. So how God can be revealed in the good people and the righteous people, and the important figure of the Yazidism. So if we go to the religious texts that speak about those revelations, there is a text that speaks from nothing to the existence. The text states that I emerged in Yazid or Izid, and in Moses, and also in Jesus in Jerusalem, and it refers to the places as well. And also one of the important revelations are three important ones. We have Taus Malak, which is the eternal light of God, and we have Sheikh Adi, which is God's representation, and also Sheikh Hassan, who is the moon's representation. If we go to Taus Malak in particular, and his existence in the Yazidi texts, we will notice how it's explained as an eternal light. And it is not something physical, but it's created from light. And from him, 7 lights have emerged. And this refers to the 7 angels. So when these lights come together, they create Taus Malak. So is it Jibril or Srafil or the other angels? We should say that when those are consolidated, when all these 7 lights or 7 angels come together, they create Taus Malak, or the peacock angel. And it's also mentioned in one of the verses. God created the universe from the atom, and from the 7 lights created Taus Malak. And also there are some references related to Sheikh Adi as well. And philosophers, Sufism or Sophists spoke about Taus Malak. We have Aristotle, Farabi, and Ben Sina. They consider him the first mind. They consider Taus Malak the first mind. And Plato also considered him the first intellectual. And many other scientists and philosophers have referred to him. Even when they referred to Jibril Amin, they described him as the biggest light as Taus Malak. And the Sufis considered Taus Malak as the symbol of the eternal light. And sometimes some people consider strange when we refer to Abdul Qadir Gilani, but this is what he referred to. Abdul Qadir Gilani has referred to Taus Malak, and it says that I have seen the light of Taus Malak. And I believe that those texts could be difficult or challenging for interpretation. Another important figure is Sheikh Adi. I will speak very quickly about him. I'll finish soon. So Sheikh Adi is not an angel. It is just a savior. That is why he has an important value for the Yazidism. And also in the
Sheikh
verses,
Ali is considered the
they
salvation of
refer to that and
Yazidism,
they
just
say
like
how he
the
was the
case of
rescuer, the
Christ in the
savior
case
for the
of
Yazidis. The
Christianity.
same for Jesus Christ.
I will stop the
If
presentation
my
now,
time is up, I will stop here.
then I will
And maybe
take
later
the
on I can
comments and
share this
questions if you have
presentation
had
with you so
any
you can have a look at it.
Jenny, thank you
Thank
very
you so
much
much.
for this
Thank you for
one.
listening.
Thank you, Bazad. I promise.
شكرا جزيلا الأستاذ بهزاد.
I promise the audience that you will share that your screen will be translated into English, including the references for the books you mentioned. Otherwise, they are limited only to the interpreter's recorded voice. So please, working group, please, Bazad, be ready to have it translated as soon as possible, before the 14th. Thank you again, Bazad, for this wide view, for letting us feel more like we are beginning to know some of the Yazidi being. And Shireen, now please, the screen is yours. And nicely, your screen is both in English and Arabic, so the English speakers will not be compromised. Go ahead, dear. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Today I will be talking about. I will limit my. I will shorten the lecture because I know beginning the
May I interrupt you just 1 second, just so we don't lose this? The audience is asking Bazad to put in the chat the name of the books you mentioned, so people can read them and refer to them and know more. So please, and all of the speakers, when you refer to any published reference, please put it in the chat. People here really want to learn. Thank you so much. So sorry, Shireen. I didn't want to not share that with Bazat now. Go ahead, Shireen.
المجال لك الآن. Good evening, everybody. Because of the time, I will talk very shortly about my presentation. So I will talk about the custom and traditions of the Yezidis, including the feasts and also baptism. In the Yazidi community or in the faith of Yazidis, we've got six major feasts like the Yazidi New Year. We have the assembly feast, or we can call it pilgrimage feast, and also we have the fasting feast, and also baptism, Qadarinas feast, and also Belende feast. These are the name of the feast. I will talk more about three of them. I will only explain three of these feasts. Regarding the Yazidi New Year, we also call it in the Yazidi or Kurdish language, we call it the Wednesday of April, which falls on the 3rd of April according to the Eastern calendar. And also this feast is regard the creation and also fertility. In this feast, we've got some symbols and figures, including the eggs, and we consider it referring to the creation of the world and the universe. When and the interpretation for the coloring of eggs, it means that the land solidified with the coming of Lalish to the earth, and also we talk about fertility because the land grew green and everything began to grow on lands, and then we began to break the eggs, and it symbolizes when we break. It means it is about the explosion of the pearl into the universe we are living in today. And then, so I showed the picture of the eggs painted and colored. At the same time, Yazidis, on the eve of feast, they go out in the nature. They bring a plant, uh, wind flowers, and attach them to the doors of their households and also to their shrines. And all during this feast, we don't actually celebrate weddings because we consider April to be the bride, and there shouldn't be any other wedding. And people also do not make any sense during this feast. These are the main actually points regarding the Yazidi feast. And then people gather together. They will light candles, or what we say wicks, on the eve of the feast. And the second feast is the assembly feast, or what we call Jama'at, getting together feast. It lasts for 6 days at Lalish temple. Every Yazidis or all Yazidis, be it inside or outside of Iraq, try to get together inside Lalish, where we have the rites and rituals that continue for 7 days. The most important of these rites is the Sama, or what we call it dance, a religious dance, and then we have the baptism, and then also we have Apar, which means victimizing the bull or offering the bull as a sacrifice, which Sama is actually a sort of dance done after the night falls. It is done in the court of Lalish, in the middle of which there is a light or a candle, which is also considered sacred for Yezidis, symbolizing Tawis Malak or peacock angel. And then we have 6 people wearing white clothes, and then there is another one wearing a black one, heading all of them. And also the head of Fuqara, which is a group of Yazidi men, and considered as if he is the Sheikh Adi leading them. And also this is done to the tune of tambourine and flute and qawals, or we can say the reciters of religious texts. It's also a religious group taking care of the recite. This is the guy, this is the man wearing the black is Shikadi, and the 7 people behind him are, and then you can also see the candle, which refers to Taoist angel. At the same time, we have on the day 5, we have some ceremonies called we have a bull to sacrifice. It also symbolizes fall, or we can say autumn. People begin to pray for rain to come during the winter, and also for the coming months to be bountiful. And during this ceremony, they fire some kind of fire for the bull to get out of the main gate. And also there is a tribe of Yazidis called Qaidis. They actually chase after the bull to the shrine of Sheikh Shamis, where they sacrifice, or we can say slaughter the bull, and whose meat is distributed to the poor people inside the large temple. After that, during this week, a lot of people bring their children to be baptized at the White Fountain in Lalish Temple. And then they also try to baptize some piece of cloth when they actually cover the tombs of the saints and the shrines of Yezidi. And the most important thing that's happening here, the people, they try to baptize of cloth put on the funeral or the bed where the Sheikh is buried, and we call it actually the tomb of Sheikh Hadi. And that is usually a piece of cloth baptized, or we can say soaked in the White Fountain water. Here, as you can see, people are gathering together in Lalish Temple, and now we will be talking. At the same time, we will have another feast, which is called Yazidi fasting feast. We've got 3 days, which of course our fasting starts from the sunset to the from sunrise to the sunset. No one is allowed to eat anything until the sunset. After the fasting of these 3 days comes the feast. In the morning of the feast, people visit the dead ones, or we can say that their loved dead ones. And then we try to celebrate it. We try to congratulate each other on the occasion of this feast. Here, as you can see, the children are visiting the neighbors to take their sweets or anything over to them by the term, or by what we call, yeah, it's a kind of candy. And then we have Batasgia, a feast, which is also one of the important feasts, especially celebrated by Chalki tribe. Um, Lasting for 7 days. They fast on the first day, on the second day, and on the third day, they fast for the half day, and then they break the fast. And after that, we um, uh, at the same time, people offer, or we can say make offer sacrifices. On the last day, it is called Al-Qadr night, or we can say people don't sleep during that night to pray until the sun rise, and then they begin to sleep. This is also available in English language. If anyone needs the PDF or English version, I can provide it. During the feast, they make some special foods. After the sacrifice, they they chop the sacrifice into 7 pieces. They cook the according, because we have 7 angels, so we chop it into 7 pieces, representing that. So they make these special food, and also they have these reels of thread, which is also considered sacred by Yazidis. Um, and we visit the people of Chelki, which is a group of Yazidis, and then we take this piece of thread from these celebrating families. Why, if you may ask why, because it was believed in the past that this kind of thread would protect people from evil. So this is actually the meat served during this feast. And all Yazidis uh, baptize their children in the Lalish temple, especially from the water of White Fountain. It shouldn't be it shouldn't necessarily be a children. It can be any age, because we Iraqis can actually baptize our children easily, given the closeness to Lalish, or we can say we can visit them Lalish easily. But there are Yazidis in Syria, Turkey, Russia, elsewhere, so they don't always have the chance to visit Lalish when the children are still at a young age. So they can come anytime they want to baptize. So it's a kind of obligation for every citizen to be baptized at Lalish Temple in White Fountain. And here, as you can see, I showed some pictures of the baptism as practiced by Yazdis. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Shireen, for your beautiful presentation. As, as you see, and I'm speaking, of course, to the whole audience, as, as you're very well. As you see, I'm speaking to the audience. It's very important in the ICMGLT not only to speak about trauma, but to speak about the people who have experienced the trauma. So we know who they are culturally, what interests them, what's important to them, what leads their lives, what makes them feel comfortable in this world. And so both Bazad and Shireen have done a wonderful job of that. Bazad, just please put the book's name and etc., as I said before, in the chat. And we now move indeed to a world expert here on the genocides of the Yazidi people. And I look forward very much to again learn more from Daoud. Daoud, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So, campaigns on the Yazidis. The Yazidis have gone through the most difficult periods of their existence, struggling for survival. And they are still going through difficult labor for that. And they have lost many of their followers through killing and displacement. And groups of them have converted to other beliefs. And they prefer that out of fear of the torments of death and the insults of honor, and the rest were not preoccupied with pain from performing heroic deeds to save what could be saved. So women also participated, and they became accustomed to the scenes of the dead and wounded. And they became like knights in patience and endurance. One of the effects of the unfair fatwa wars against the Yazidis and their ferocity and brutality was that a dark veil overwhelmed the Yazidi sense of pain, which concealed what a normal person enjoys, because the disgusting brutality requires confronting it with endurance in order to receive the calamities with an open heart. So the pain was violently repelled by patience in the face of killing, mutilation, wailing, wounds, and brutality. And the Yazidis became a tremendous energy of mercy and compassion hides beneath it, which waves the feeling of the Yazidis and the sense of pain. The fatwas were ready to declare jihad for the deceived Muslims who were ready to carry out the mission and were proudly rushing to jihad in order to establish Islam in the region as for the truth. And they were rushing to satisfy their lusts and false desire that are outside the limits of God. And those didn't forget to climb the fame on the bodies of the slaughtered Yazidis, including their captives, and made some of them sacrifice for their holidays that are repeatedly slaughtered instead of animals every year. All of this happened and left behind tragedies that were engraved in the Yazidi memories and deepened its unforgivable wounds. And we have a religious text that confirm the extent of the disaster. The poet and researcher Abdul Rahman al-Mazuri says, the Yazidis' concealment one day in a certain direction is nothing but fear of their being erased and exterminated. After their continuous exposure to oppression, the Holocaust, and unjust fatwas. While Laura Abbas al-Azawi says about the tragedies and campaigns against the followers of this religion, the extraction of the faith is not an easy or simple matter. No matter how true it is, such incidents are not carried out due to the intensity of adherence to the right in any way, but rather are explained by the fact that the faith is a natural or innate in human, and if it is established, it doesn't come out easily, even by force or cruelty. As for Gernot Windsor, he mentions every Yazidi family has a story about the kidnapping of women and children by the Kurds, Turks, and Persians. And Thomas Bo says, in the 17th century, the repeated massacres only served to deepen the Yazidis' practices and beliefs. One is amazed and wonders in confusion about how the Yazidis survived and how they preserve their religions, origins, customs, traditions, especially if we know that many empires, people, and religions lost their entities and existence as a result of those campaigns and didn't bear the burdens of them. So they merged with other peoples and religions. But we, the Yazidis, we lived in extremely difficult circumstances and faced permanent enemy who killed the Yazidis and took their women and children captive. The historians Ibn al-Athir in 833 till 842 said, Al-Mu'tasim ordered Abdullah bin al-Said Anas al-Azadi to Mosul and ordered him to fight Jafar. Abdullah marched to Mosul and Jafar was in Matais, and he had taken control of it. Abdullah headed out and fought him and drove him out so that he couldn't be seen. The road to it was narrow, and he penetrated the straits until he reached it and fought him. Jafar and the kids with him sought victory over Abdullah because of their knowledge of those places and their ability to fight in them. So Abdullah and most of those with him were defeated. Al-Mas'udi indicated that the rebels, led by Jafar, took control of the areas located between Mosul, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. The Kurdish uprising caused great concern in the Caliphate state. So Caliph Al-Mu'tasim took strict measure to eliminate it. So in order to successfully confront the Kurds, who were accustomed to fighting in the mountains, and for the third time, a large army led by Aitach was sent against him, and they surrounded him and almost captured him. This Jafar was first defeated in the direction of Babakis before the Caliph's force, but they finally defeated him in the Mount Dasan. However, he preferred death to a life of a humanitarian. So he drank a cup of poison and died from its effect in the years 226 till 841 AD. His companions dispersed, and Aitach led the Kurdish prisoners to Tikrit. They also committed heinous massacres and terrible crimes that make one's forehead blush. Aitach and his companions didn't leave Jafar's body on the battlefield, but rather took it to Samurra and crucified it next to Babak al-Khurami and Mazia. Badr al-Din Lulu sent his army to fight the Yazidis in order to force them to give money, as he was burdening them with paying taxes. A battle took place between his army and the Yazidi fighters, which were led by Sheikh Hassan, whom Badr al-Din feared and monitored his movement. He was waiting for the opportunities to punish Sheikh Hassan, who had made Mosul the center of his call. The battle ended with his defeat at the hands of the Yazidis after many of them were killed and others were taken prisoners. Then Badr al-Din called upon the Muslim Kurdish scholars to him, and they unanimously issued a fatwa on the necessity of jihad against these infidels. The tribes gathered against them from every deep valley, supported by Badr al-Din's army, until they defeated them. He crucified 100 of them and slaughtered another 100, and ordered the cutting off of the limbs of their limbs and hanging them on the gates of Mosul. The campaign of the governor of Baghdad, Hassan Pasha, on 1704 and 1723 in 1715 is considered one of the largest Ottoman campaigns launched against the Yazidis during the 18th century, as Hassan Pasha mobilized a large army that included forces from Shahrazur and some Kurdish bays, and marched towards Sinjar. Despite the size of his army and the use of artillery, the Yazidis were determined to resist and fortified themselves in a location in the mountain called Deir al-Asi, and took it as a refuge to defend themselves. they confronted the campaign after they set up defensive barricades and bricks there. When the Ottoman army approached them, they initiated the fight and met it with spears and arrows and fought with parties and heroes, and the fires of war ignited between them. And there was much stabbing and beating between the two sides. However, the Yazidis were unable to withstand this fierce army that outnumbered them in number and also equipment, which continued his attack on their fortresses and his brutality toward them and killing a great number of them, dispersing their crowds. And despite the enormity of the campaigns, artillery was used. So these are few samples and examples of those campaigns. And the difference between Mosul and Baghdad campaigns, in Mosul, they were attacking and killing people. But the difference in Baghdad, or in Baghdad state, they were beheading people and putting them in big bags or sacks and taking them to the caliph. All the campaigns, honestly, so far, I've documented 162 campaigns or genocides against the Yazidis based on authentic, reliable sources. And all of those campaigns were against the Yazidis as a result of religion. Only for the religion, nothing else. Because they had just a different religion. And the authorities, the consecutive authorities, Abbasi, Ottoman empires, all of them were emphasizing this point, that they shouldn't leave any religion that's not divine, or they don't have a holy book. And also, one of the brutal campaigns against the Yazidis, Habib Pasha, in 737. And also one of the German scholars mentioned this, and there were hundreds of killings. And he was an eyewitness, and he was present in the battlefield at that time. And also he mentioned to Habib Pasha that children and women shouldn't be killed, but Habib Pasha was killing every person, women, children, captive, peaceful people, etc. Also there's a Merikora campaign, which was a huge campaign. They tried to eradicate the Yazidis, and they were able to achieve some of their goals because they killed 80% of the Yazidis, they buried them, and they burned the rest. This was one of the biggest campaigns and the most brutal and heinous crimes against the Yazidis. There's also Omar Wahbi Pasha's campaign. Omar Wahbi Pasha in 1892, when he led a vicious campaign against the Yazidis. And he emphasized to the Ottoman emperors the importance of converting the Yazidis to Muslims. And he stated that he was able to convert all the Yazidis to Muslims, but he was lying about this. So he informed the Ottoman authorities that he converted all the Yazidis, but he wasn't honest about this. And also in 1652 or on 1650, Mirza Dassani took the leadership of Mosul state and also Sinjar. He supported the Ottoman Empire in liberating Baghdad. So he was honored with this military rank and also leading Sinjar in 1650. However, after a year and 3 months, they betrayed him. And then he went to Istanbul, and there he was killed with 100 of his men or his soldiers. So when I speak about genocides and campaigns and converting the Yazidis into other religions, I have a book that speaks about the geography of Yazidis and their tribes, and how the Yazidis were in huge and wide geographical spots and areas. For example, in Khorasan, we have Yazidis, and also in northern Iran, we have groups. However, they were converted to other ideology or other religions as a result of those campaigns. And also between Armenia, Iran, and Turkey, those areas were inhabited by the Yazidis. And also if you go to Diyarbakir and Mardin and also Aleppo, where Al-Quds was a Yazidi state. And Salman Pasha also was a prince in there. And if you go to Hasaka, Qamishlo, and then Sinjar, and then Shekhan, Harir, and Erbil, most of those areas were locations or places for the Yazidis. However, as a result of those genocides and campaigns, they were converted into other religions, and only a few people, a handful number of people were left, and also those are subjected to different forms of massacres. And the latest one was the genocide of 2014, and this is a still ongoing genocide because our people are still living in IDP camps, and they are living under dire conditions. And only a few states recognized what happened to the Yazidis as the Yazidi genocide, and also the Iraqi parliament hasn't recognized what happened to the Yazidis as genocide. That's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dawood, for this instructive presentation and familiarizing the audience with the fact that the August 3rd, 2014 genocide was not the first, and that literally in the being of Yazidis, genocides and campaigns are multi-generational legacies. This is crucially important when we think of future generations. I would like now to show 5 minutes of a film, of a video that was prepared by survivors of related to the August 3rd, 2014 genocide. We will then hear from the first survivor, Shireen Kudida. But let's first see just 5 minutes of the film. Robbie, please share it with us.
تيرورستين داعش بشيوكي درندانا هيرش كراستا شنغا دابدوراوي لوي درمي چندهان فس بس بحالي قدر رادي وما نزاني أفعال ما نفسر ما دي ويزارو كد مجمع قد كمزلامين مو داك مشكل ماو أورا قد تراك ما بنات تكش برناك هارون ما سيرش حتى يصير معي نصيحة
Thank you very much, Robbie, for helping us show this. Shireen Kudida, would you please show yourself and join us? I see that you are here. Shireen? Hello, dear.
Hello.
So glad to see you.
Likewise. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the community, of the Yazidi community, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about the suffering of my community, and especially those who have been severely impacted by ISIS genocide. In the past 10 centuries, this community has faced many kinds of persecutions, whether military attacks, evictions, ethnic cleansing, cultural change, or genocides. But regardless of what kind of persecution, women always had have their share of suffering. And therefore, any form of motivation and encouragement is important to us as women in this community. I have been living among my fellow Yazidis in Iraq and witnessed their day-to-day challenge, which it has given me an energy and intensity to stand by them all day and every day. 10 years ago, ISIS occupied our areas and committed a genocide against my community. This genocide has resulted in killing thousands of people, abducting more than 6,400 other men, women, and children, including myself and my family. It has caused the displacement of the community into the northern part of the country to live in unfinished buildings, under bridges, and whatever places available to hold half a million people until the refugee camps were built for them. I was abducted by ISIS along with my family and remained in captivity for nearly 3 years. During those 3 years, I witnessed the most horrific acts the humans have capable of. Now, 10 years passed since the genocide, and nearly 100,000 people from the community have left the country towards Europe and other countries, and another 110,000 have returned to their homeland area, but we still have nearly half of the population live in the IDP camps and not able to return due to many reasons. Partnering with many local NGOs in the region, I have been able to speak loudly about the suffering and rail of support ever since I have survived, which has been an exceptional experience for me and my survivor friends. We survivors have strived to pave the way for those other survivors who were uncertain and gave them courage, stand strong while facing challenge after they were rescued from ISIS. Our approach has been to enable survivors to express their feelings by telling their stories and empowering those who experienced difficulties and enrich the lives of those individuals and their families through the active creative engagement process. and we made efforts to give the survivors the opportunity to advocate, not just in community level, but also worldwide. Today, and through my participation in this webinar, we have been given the platform to raise the voice of the community that has been victimized for many years. And we are here to tell the world that the genocide committed by ISIS is an ongoing process, and we need you all to join the efforts and ease suffering of those affected individuals and their families. Thank you once again for organizing this event, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. With great opportunities comes great responsibilities, and I am ready to take those responsibilities.
We are humbled and honored to have you with us, dear. And we are fully committed to make sure that your voice is heard as widely as possible. Thank you so much. And from women and girls, we move to boys. Safe, please. We don't see you. Here we do. Tell us, speak for the boys, please.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I honestly don't know from where to start, so I think it's worth mentioning before we talk about August 3rd to remember the hundreds of Yazidis who were targeted by Al-Qaeda back in 2007. And 10 years ago, as of today, I was in the middle of Shingal at my uncle's house. I was enjoying my life there. I was on my summer break, and I never thought about imposing religious doctrines, killing, displacement, captivity, battles, and conquests of cities. These terms were not in my mind back then. Although it's worth mentioning that I did learn about such things back in grade 5 in history in Iraq, and I'm sure many of you have learned the same thing, but we didn't quite know what those words actually meant back then. So today I have decided to talk about the forgotten Yazidi children who survived ISIS captivity. Sadly, the international community and my community have neglected what happened to us as survivors, as children. So on August 3rd, as you may know, ISIS attacked the Yazidi community and they committed a genocide against the Yazidi population in Shingal and the surrounding areas. So I'm going to talk about how ISIS were selecting children and executing them. First of all, they did not consider our IDs. They would look at the children, round them up, look at them, see if they are physically big or strong. They would execute them. Also, I know some of my friends were killed on the close to the mountain on August 3rd, and some of them survived. So they told me that ISIS round us up and they would check our armpit hair or pubic hair to decide whether they will execute them or no. The fact that they were doing these things are considered crimes against humanity. And I have in quotations age, as I mentioned earlier. They didn't really care about how old you were, because I know that some of my friends were younger than me and they were executed in the mother's mass grave in Sola. They were 10 years old and 11 years old, they were executed back then. So the children who survived August 3rd and August 15th, they were sent to military training camps in Iraq and Syria. And these are the names of some of the military training camps that I was in, along with like tens of Yazidis, and of course, other children from different countries who willingly joined ISIS. As you may have seen on social media, back then, ISIS released a video called the Tabs of Caliphate, I think. And that video was filmed at the Al Farouk Sharia Institute in a place called Siluk in Syria, in northern Raqqa, I believe. So that was the first military training camp that I joined along with 50 other Yazidi kids. We were there inside a one-story school, and we had military trainers from Belgium. We had teachers from Syria. They were teaching us and trying to convert us to Islam. We were then sent to Al Farabi Institute inside Raqqa. Now, these names, if you search them on Google Map in Arabic, you will see them. They were actual schools, but ISIS prepared them for different purposes. Another military training camp, and I would say the hardest one that I have been in, is the Central Institute inside Raqqa again. And then the military academy in Tabqa in Syria. So I think on 2015, 16 Yazidi boys were sent to the military academy in Tabqa, and then they pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and they were sent to battles. I know some of them were killed near like the Turkish border with Syria, and some of them actually went as a suicide. There were many more military training camps in Iraq and Syria, but these are the ones that I have been to. Now, the goal of these institutes were converting us to Islam, indoctrination through Quran and Hadith from ISIS perspective. Some of the books that they were teaching us, I have them written down there if you want to look them up. The Creed or the Monotheism by Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. That was one of the main books that they were teaching us. The Islamic Jurisprudence, the book called the Mayor of Rulings by Abdul Ghani. You could search them in Arabic. 40 Jihadists, it's a book that talks about jihad, and there are hadiths in it and talks about jihad, and it's like more like an inspiration dose to fighters, to inspire them to go and fight for ISIS, you know. And the biography of the Prophet by Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab again. So those were the main books that ISIS used to indoctrinate us and brainwash us. Through these books, many of us were like completely brainwashed, including my youngest brother. He was completely brainwashed. And I know that hundreds of Yazidi kids were completely ready to die for the Islamic State. And actually, many of them did like lost their lives in Iraq and Syria. And of course, you know that we were called the Cubs of Caliphate, or the future generation. So this picture that you see here, it's from the first institute that we joined. It's the Al Farouk Sharia Institute for the Cubs of Caliphate. This was the first video that was released by ISIS for Yazidi kids, I believe. So after attending military training camps and being like official members of ISIS, the Yazidi kids were sent to battles in Iraq and Syria. Some of them were sent as like suicide bombers, and I have an example here of a Yazidi twins who actually went on suicidal operations in Mosul, I think on 2017. Assad and Amjad, their picture is on the left-hand side. These guys were, I believe, 14 years old or so. They went on suicide operations. Now, many of you may have seen on social media that the Western media talks about ISIS using the drugs or so to do such things. I think that is completely not true because, as I said, ISIS had strategies of indoctrinating us through books that were written by Islamic scholars, and they were taught by some people who were holding PhDs in Sharia law, you know. On the right-hand side, you may see that a group of boys are being prepared to execute some prisoners. And I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but the guy on the second guy from the left is a Yazidi guy. His name is Imad from Kocho. He was with me in the military training camp from Sloop. He is executing a guy, and ISIS were calling him Abu Fuad al-Kurdi. He's executing a guy in his head. So, I mean, when it comes to this situation, you have no option. You have to do it. Otherwise, they're gonna tell you you're not a good Muslim, or they will execute you if you don't do what they are telling you to do. There was another video from Wilayat al-Khair or Deir ez-Zor. A Yazidi guy is slaughtering someone, and that guy named Barak, he's from my village. He is slaughtering someone and putting his head on his back and sending a message to the Yazidi community, telling them that we will take you, we will execute you, and we will take you as slaves. So after all of that, many of us thankfully managed to escape captivity. And this is the unknown future for us, or for those who are still in refugee camps in northern Iraq. I was denied the opportunity to go back to school because I spent almost 3 years in captivity. But now here in Canada, I am a university student. And many Yazidi kids are like that because they spent years in captivity, and the Iraqi government or the education system considered them as failures. And many of them don't even want to go back to school from what they have been through in captivity and from studying like ISIS's ideology for many years. When I was in the refugee camp until today, there is no proper mental health services for those Yazidi kids who who saw like horrific crimes against humanity. And in fact, some of them actually acted and they executed some innocent people under pressure from ISIS. They are not getting mental health support in Iraq till today, and there are like many different NGOs in Iraq and inside refugee camps. They don't provide mental health services. If they do so, those who are providing the mental health services are not trained properly to do so. And in the refugee camps, there are no proper ways of reintegration. Our people have no proper way of reintegrating us back into the society. I'm sure you all know that many Yazidi kids have forgotten their Kurmanji language, and they speak different languages such as Arabic, Turkish, English, French, and so on. And sadly, nobody talks about the Yazidi kids. From my community, nobody talks about them. And the international community completely ignored what happened to us. The only reason that the international community could actually talk about the Yazidi kids, because they were fearing that those kids will become the future generation and they will become a threat on their public safety. And because there is nothing to do in the refugee camps, those Yazidi kids and survivors are getting married the moment that they turn like 15, 16, 17. I took this picture last year when I went to a refugee camp, to Qadia refugee camp in Iraq. Now, this is how those Yazidi survivors spend their days. They eat, sleep, drink alcohol. If you see the red arrows pointing to the bottles, that's actually whiskey. They drink it because they have nothing to do. They gamble and they play dominoes. They smoke and they are all addicted to like vaping, smoking, alcohol because they have nothing to do. It's unfortunate to see this is happening to those who lost their childhood, but sadly, nobody cares about what happened to us. And I would like to end on saying that I would like all of you to fight for the Yazidi children. Yes, women did survive and suffer a lot, and they were sexually abused. But I would really like all of you to fight for the Yazidi kids. And there is way lot to talk about, but I will end it here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Said, for your crucially important presentation and message. The issue of indoctrination of children is shared by many currently suffering groups, and I will invite you to participate in such an international event, so you can teach other people, for example, in Ukraine, about indoctrination from the child's point of view. Thank you, and we are honored to carry your voice onward. Last but not least, our dear friend, Haider Elias, please. Make it 8 minutes because I still we have questions, we have discussion, and I don't want to deprive this generous audience that of whom you brought so many. Go ahead, Haider, my friend.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel. I'm resetting my watch to make sure I don't pass the time, but I've intentionally made my presentation brief in order to help the rest of the speakers speak and expand their ideas. Here for that, and also sharing my email on the chat in case anybody have any questions because of the brief of the presentation. Let me go ahead and share this slide. All right, I hope everyone can see. All right, is everybody able to see the screen? I'm going to briefly talk about the current situation of the Yazidis who have been affected by this genocide. Of course, that does not include every Yazidis worldwide or in Iraq, but I've seen that there was a lot of informative presentations from my colleagues, and I want to thank them for that. And also, I want to thank you for organizing this event, as it is important to me, to the Yazidis, and to the general survivors specifically. What the community is going through after 10 years of living in displacement camp in northern part of Iraq. So I've also have been briefed and putting images as the slides are just speaking for themselves. This couple of images was when Exodus running away, and the other one the life in the camp or in the camps, as it's more than one. So one of the question is, where do most of the Yazidis live who have been affected by this genocide? Obviously, we know that after 10 years of the genocide, and nearly half of the community still live in internally displaced camps in northern Iraq, Kurdistan. We have nearly 300,000 of these people in the camps and surrounding the camps in the area, whether renting apartments or purchasing small lands or even just building their tents somewhere or in unfinished buildings. The community spread in 15 camps within the Kurdistan region of Iraq. The smallest camp is about 92 families. The largest could hold, in terms of individual, as many as 20,000, but about 5,000 families, I should say, as we're counting by families. Nearly 100,000 people have migrated from the country seeking a safe haven, for them and for a safe future for their children. Thousands of the community members still live in refugee camps in Turkey as we speak today, and also thousands of others still live in refugee camps in Greece, waiting to be resettled in European country as a safe haven, and also, fleeing from repeated persecution. Nearly 19,000 families have returned to Sinjar. I agree with Shireen, it's about 110,000 individuals who have returned to Sinjar, but not necessarily, to their own homes. So a lot of them have just been moving to whatever is available for them. Life in those camps, it's very difficult to express as they've been through, and I have witnessed in the past many years, talking to them, living with them, visiting them. Lack of proper sanitation in the past 10 years has created a major health crisis for the community. And aside from cultural effects and anything, or economics, causing communicable diseases that have impacted all ages. Unfortunately, unemployment has become a major economic problem for the community as well. Early age smoking, as Saif mentioned, and drinking is an unprecedented phenomenon, something that the community has never witnessed in the entire history of it. Prostitution, unfortunately, has been a devastating effect on the society in these camps. The life expectancy has gone down from 70s from prior to 2014 to low 60s because of multiple factors related to this genocide. As I witness and see a lot of people die in their 50s and early 60s, it's really unfortunate that we have less older people, less wisdom in the community because of the crisis. It has become a new norm for the Yazidis, unfortunately. The ongoing culture, genocide, children of 10 years and younger have been born in IDP camps and speak of their camps as their hometowns. For example, if you ask someone, where are you from? Instead of saying I'm from that town, they say I'm from that camp. These children haven't seen any religious structure or houses of worships that are related to the culture and traditions of the Yazidi community. They also have missed a decade of properly celebrating the rituals in their homelands. And they are prone to change their way of life and to adapt other more popular cultures as if foreign to them, as there are no other choices on hands. The process of reconstruction is what they need, as we were asked to see what the Yazidi community needs in these days and what the international community and also the Iraqi government needs to help with, and is the process of reconstruction of their hometowns in Sinjar region start and become sustainable. Also, I'm going to put this away from my screen. Proper and fair compensation for those who their homes are destructed and cannot afford to rebuild, that to ensure ending the displacement, guarantee the safety and security of the returning families and ensuring the prevention of future genocides, doing so by including the community members in the leadership position. The structure of plan that can include looking for nearly 2,700 missing women and children, helping families to reshape the infrastructure of their homes as their families have grown in size. Also help rebuilding the infrastructure of institutions such as healthcare, education, and water foundation. Recognition of this genocide by remaining international community, as Mr. Dawood mentioned, and as well as the national government of Iraq that needs to recognize fully and properly that. Ending the anti-Yazidism rhetoric, ending the toxic hate speech that has been formed in the minds of surrounding cultures for centuries, if not more, making peace, tolerance, and education on other cultures a part of schools' core curriculums throughout the nation of Iraq, if not the region. Stop using the community as bargaining chips for the purpose of extorting political gains. So these are the things that they need. Thank you very much once again for letting me speak, giving me and my colleagues the opportunities to speak in this very difficult week as we approach the 10th anniversary of the Yazidi genocide. Each one of us topic was varied, and so I was speaking about their current situation, and thank you for the opportunity once again. Now we are back to you, Dr. Daniel, if you can hear us.
Thank you very much, Tyler, for a superb presentation of the current situation and the urgency of the needs. I hope as many people around the world are heeding this, including policymakers and international decision makers. Normally, as I said before, we have a period of time for a dialogue among the presenters first, and then we address questions from the audience. But because we had many speakers and so much to say, I would, with your permission, august speakers, I would rather go to the questions from the audience first. Is that okay with you?
It's okay for me.
Is it okay, Dawood, Bazad? Bazad, is that okay? Thank you, because the audience has been waiting eagerly to ask you. And if you look at the chat, the audience is totally engaged and really from all over the world. So I do want to remind everyone that the recording, that every registrant automatically receive the recording. Also, at the end of today, the recording will be on our website forever. So, I mean, you know what I mean by forever. But the idea is to teach, right? As far and wide as possible. And that's why I promised that, for example, Bazat's PowerPoints will be also translated into English, and the recordings will be both in English and in Arabic. And yes, you're permitted to use the recordings as widely as you want, but give the reference to it, okay? So indeed, the first question from the audience was from Hashim Yusuf, no, that was not the first one. Well, I'll find it. The first question was about, from a journalist who asked if he can quote some of what was said. As far as the center is concerned, it's a yes, and unless the speakers want not to be quoted, please tell us now.
It's okay for me to be quoted.
I think your teachings have been so important that they should teach as wide as possible, but it's up to you. You let us know. So the issue is, please go ahead, use the recording to teach wider and wider and wider. That's what we are here for. And someone in the audience said that we should do it more often. Absolutely. We have over 50 recordings of other webinars on our website from all over the world with so many suffering populations. And we have a very active working group, the Yazidi working group. Some of the members are right here, such as Haider, such as Shireen. And we will continue meeting, and we will continue with more and more webinars. So if you have any recommendation as to where to go from now, please write to us. And we have some more ideas also, of course. And as I said, it's a very involved working group. We meet every 2 weeks, and those of you who want to join, you're absolutely welcome. Just write to us. So Hashim Yusuf is saying, I think all issues about crime around the world should attempt to include slave trading. Of course. So Hashim, if you have an idea and a unique, a specific idea, email us. We can evolve that into a webinar. Absolutely. Then Selene Vargum writes, thank you very much for a great seminar. My question for the end of the program is ISIS regaining power in the region? And what can we do as an international community? Does any one of you want to very briefly address that?
And is ISIS regaining power?
Yes, you can read it in the question, among the question. It
Yeah,
says,
the answers.
is
Go.
ISIS is regaining power in the region? And what can we do as international community?
ISIS is taking advantage of conflicts and political crisis in the region. And fortunately, in Iraq is becoming stable recently. But in Syria, unfortunately, because of the political deadlock in the region and multiple form of governings, it has created an opportunities for the sleeper cells of ISIS to reconnect, reorganize, and reform their ideology and their forces to be physically visible in the ground. That is dangerous when we say not Iraq, but Syria, but that's really very related. So yes, unfortunately, ISIS is present. The ideology in Iraq is present, but the active process in Syria is more. I hope that answers the question. I'm trying to be as brief as possible.
It's a huge question, and perhaps that is an idea for another webinar.
Absolutely. I
Right,
agree.
so let's, Zira, can Michelle please note this as one of the ideas? What happens with terrorist groups? How do they operate? How do we prevent or defend ourselves, etc.?
So part of the question, sorry, Dr. Daniel, is the international community should really support the peoples. When I say people in plural of the region, especially in Syria and Iraq, to help resettle, because they take advantage of the vacuum and the empty spaces that are left in the region, especially in Iraq, in Sinjar, and in Syria. So the international community needs to support the infrastructure of the region in Sinjar, support the local economic for the and encourage the safe return, and also be part of the political solutions that are going to affect positively on the communities. So that's what the international community is capable of and what ought to do.
So Haider, start thinking about the structure of the webinar on that, please, okay? And Lois Bernard is asking, can you explain why the quote world has not talked about this genocide? She said she's sorry if she misses it. What about the United Nations? Again, any one of you, Haider, you want to take it for 1 second, please, because we have many other questions.
Some of the world powers have recognized the genocide, and we're thankful to that, including their government officials, the government structure itself, and the parliaments, or anybody with those nations. But some others have remained silent, unfortunately, for political reasons. One of them that so that they can, Yazidis doesn't matter to them, unfortunately, but that's the reality we live in within the UN or also other world powers.
And again, if some of our webinars are related to reparative justice, you can find them on our site, exactly dedicated to the silence of the world or society or even the family or even inside our state about trauma. So, but again, so we had some webinars about that. We should have more. And whenever these kind of questions are asked, I always share my dream that we should all the working groups of the center should get together for a conference to discuss the similarities and unique differences of these questions. Dalia, before I attend I mention your question, there is a specific question from Margaret Rickley-Huizen. What is the suicide situation? Does any one of you have data on that?
I want to see if the rest of the group wants to speak, but there is no accurate data on the suicide rates. There are multiple NGOs, not governmental organizations, and also governmental organizations. I've been working closely with the community members who are prone, susceptible to genocide ideations. And they've been helping them go through and make their life better through cognitive therapy, through group, individual, family therapies, through many ways of helping them. Fortunately, we've been lucky that in comparison to the number of people that have gone the atrocities, the suicide rate is really low, and we're thankful to that and to the culture that's been very supportive.
Suicide is another major theme for us to develop in a separate webinar, because of course with the choice of suicide very often is determined and connected to one's cultural context, etc. in other contexts.
Dr.
But
Daniel, just
Haider, we have many more questions.
yeah, but
please.
Shireen is leaving in 5 minutes, and she wants to know if any of the audience have any questions for her before before she leaves.
She has other questions.
وأنا أيضا أريد أغادر بعد 5 دقائق والله الذي يطوف.
I need a translation. What is the translation?
Dawood also has 5 minutes left before he can go, or before he has to go.
He don't have enough time. He have only 5 minutes for that.
Okay. So how about, we don't mind staying a little longer, but if you must leave, how about if you share with us, as I said, your, so to speak, final word, so the audience is not deprived of that. What is the message you want the audience to walk away with? Go ahead, Mr. Dawood.
شكرا جزيلا. حقيقة هذه كانت ندوة جيدة جدا، ولكن يبقى هل سيتم إيصال صوتنا إلى الجهات العليا أو الجهات المسؤولة؟ وأتمنى أن نبقى على هذا التواصل معنا في حلقات قادمة في الأشهر القادمة، وفي أي وقت تريدون أن نتصل سوف نكون معكم، وشكرا جزيلا.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much, Dawood, and we look forward to learning so much more from you. Does anyone else have to leave exactly at 2? If not, do you mind if we continue with the question and answers and maybe the dialogue among you? I see that everybody is here with us. Margaret has more to say. Let me read quickly. I set up Yazidi School, Yazidi Art School, last year to help the young ones to find their way back into the education system and go to university should they want. I need more volunteer English teachers. Okay. Where are you, Margaret? Please type it in. She's also saying most of the Yazidi themselves are not seeing these conference webinars. My students say nobody cares. The asylum-seeking youth say the same. I have told so many to sign up for this webinar, but it needs to be made more simple, not necessarily needing an email, and the approach needs to be comfortable for them as well. Well, thank you. We are doing our total best to make this available as widely as possible. Unfortunately, we are international and we do belong. I'm, for example, in New York. Haider is in Texas. Shireen and Bazad are in Germany. So we are unfortunately reliant on Zoom and emails. And actually, if just imagine the world if we didn't have this. So while we are complaining about it, let's bless the world for having the ability to be in so many places and still speak with each other. So don't give up. Our purpose is to be there for everyone in the best way we can. So, okay, then there is Ala Prokovnik asking, thank you so much for your presentation. How can American mental health clinicians help address some of the issues you have discussed, especially issues related to substance use and trauma? Now, Dr. Michelle Sanders, the co-chair of our working group, the Yazidi working group, is here with us. Michelle, would you please join us and address this question? Rabbi, would you please put Michelle on so she, as an American mental health professional, clinician, can direct the question, answer the question. Michelle, are you there?
I'm looking. I don't see her in the chat right now. Let me continue to look.
Oh.
Yes, unfortunately, I don't see her.
Yes, she is an attendee. Please find her. She was with us, you remember, before. Good, good, good. Whoever is saying that, thank you, Saif. Love you. Michelle, Robbie, make sure she's with us, please.
Okay,
She
I'm
is
checking
the
her.
right one to answer this question. Robbie?
Sorry, I'm looking. I don't see her in the attendees area. Are you able to raise your hand so your name can pop up at the top?
She is here, I can see.
Okay, there we go. Got her.
Hello?
Oh yeah, here she is, wonderful. Speak up, dear, we don't hear you well.
Okay. So the question is, how can Americans help with what's going on?
Let me read you the question again, so we can, how can American mental health clinicians help address some of the issues you have discussed, especially issues related to substance use and trauma?
Okay, well, you may want to reach out to some local NGOs. There are local NGOs such as Panaga that Zirak Hamid, our co-chair, is affiliated with. There are large NGOs like Save the Children Iraq that are operating, and I don't know of any programs that are specifically addressing substance abuse, so I hear that that's a great need. So I would have those two suggestions. Additionally, I've put my email in the chat box, and I'd be happy to take time to answer any questions I can, provide any guidance or assistance as you endeavor to help. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle, so much, and for your leadership. And please, Zirak and Michelle, put on the chat all of the addresses of these organizations, okay? Thank you. So there's one more question among the question, and then I get back to you, say if I can see your hand is up. The last question among the question, what can we as the new generation, very important question, Kalo, I would like you to be in touch with us and indeed maybe belong to the working group. So Khalaf Haji asked, what can we do? What can we as the new generation do to work for our cause in whatever aspect? A wonderful question, and maybe actually Saif, who has his hands up, is the right one to answer or to begin to answer. All of you would address it, please. Saif, please.
Hello. So just on commenting back on the previous question about the mental health. So I have been here in Canada for 6 years, and I actually went to a psychologist and a psychiatrist at the same time for exactly 2 years. And unfortunately, the psychologist could not help me at all. Like, he couldn't change my life like 0.01%, because like those therapists in Western countries, they have been trained to deal with something else. With, for example, with a kid who have seen like a car accident or something like that. They are they are not trained to deal with such things about captivity, executions, uh, surviving mass graves. I think they are like, I respect their job and what they do, but I think they are useless to deal with such things. And many Yazidis here in Canada, they went to the same psychologist, and they were saying no, like the things that they were telling us to do to deal with the trauma were like kind of stupid to us. So in order to deal with such cases, you need to be familiar with the culture. You need to know what happened to the people. So I think this is from my own experience. I think that the trauma that we have seen, it will be there whatsoever. Maybe it will get a little bit easier, but it will never heal.
May I add too that that is actually part of why I was a founder of the International Society for Traumatic Stress Studies already in 1985, and as president of that, as past president, I created a curriculum for education in all schools of all professions that interface with trauma, be it police, nursing, medicine, mental health, etc., teachers included. Safe, what you say, and I've written a great deal. Those of you interested, there is a webinar on that, on the conspiracy of silence after trauma, even among psychotherapists. There are webinars on that on our site. Please. The other thing is, one of the things the center is here to do is actually to create connections with other populations and expertise within countries. So, for example, we have, next weekend, I'm giving a big lecture in Houston, Texas, to the Rwandan North American community. And Saif, I can then put you in touch with the people, the experts in Canada who helped the Rwandan survivors there, who are more trained for that. So thank you for your very candid reaction. And clearly we have to put more interaction among working groups and among communities. So if we don't do it through poor schooling or absent schooling, we do it through interaction. Thank you so much, Saif, for that answer. So this was the last question in the question and answer. Dalia, you missed it. Dawood left. I'm so sorry. But Dalia Idris asked, I would like to ask Mr. Dawood about how can the Yazidi community overcome the collective trauma experienced throughout history, particularly during the Ottoman period, to build a sustainable and stable future. What methods and resources can be utilized to strengthen Yazidi identity and culture while ensuring historical justice and preserving collective memory? I can't think of a more eloquent way to put the question, Dalia. Thank you so much. And since you are on the working group, let's build a webinar exactly on that. also please listen to the recordings of the webinars with other very important related populations and groups. Khalaf Haji, your question was referred to. Is there any other question that people want to? No, I think we addressed all of them, at least briefly. I see of our speakers, there's only Haider and Shireen and Saif here. The three of you, is there anything you'd want to say to each other? And if not, how about if you share your last words for this webinar? And you know our working group is ongoing. This is not the last time we meet. But I'm sure you have some things to share or to ask each other. Please unmute yourself. Wait a minute. Khalaf is asking, what can we as the new generations? Oh, Saif, you're right. Saif. He may have. Yes, dear. Where are you? You still didn't answer the question.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah,
So,
about the new generation of which you're one.
I think Haider would be the best person to answer this since he is an expert in this and he has been working for Yazidis for almost a decade now.
Okay, look, you have to, my answer is join the working group so we can make another webinar exactly on that, because we have so much we've learned from Nazi Holocaust survivors and their children, from indigenous people around the world, from so many other groups we are working with, from the Haiti population, etc. So please, but Haider, I think he insists on you answering, so go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the idea of how to help as a new generation is to be part of it. If you want something changed, be part of the change, like Saif is doing now and Shireen is doing now. So it's really important to be actively part of a process that create a positive change for the life of the victims and their children and the new coming generations. We all know that depression transit through generations, and it can be passed to children who have never physically experienced something. So it's really important to be part of a change. So one thing is, I think supporting education is one of the things that helps make the awareness and helps the community get over, at least partially, as Saif said, not completely, but partially getting over the trauma they've gone through. The second thing is they need to support the local economy to make sure that it's not really worsening their situation. When they are back, there are missing opportunities, like Saif said, from the education. They're missing the courage, and their socioeconomic status at home with their families is really devastating because they cannot pay their bills. So all these are contributing factors for even suicide attempts, for migration attempts, for joining groups and doing things that they would never do in a normal situation. So that's one part of how can we do as a new generation. But my final thought before I go is that we are grateful to these seminars because these are totally volunteer from great organizations like yours, from great individuals like yourselves. We also want to thank the interpreters, Mr. Saman and Mr. Peshkafti, for giving up their time. So it's really wonderful feelings to when people say how to be part of a change. This is what's going on. It's an active process. and people are volunteering worldwide of their valuable times. We know that the worldwide problems are increasing in day to day. We know that there are issues, atrocities are no less important than the Yazidis that happen every once in a while. We know that the Yazidi genocide, it was 10 years ago. But we also know that the process of this genocide is continuous. Unfortunately, the consequences of this genocide has been an ongoing effect for the Yazidis, whether it's a permanent migration or a culture change or the life in the camps. They are forcing community members, especially the younger generations, to do things that a community and the culture would never, ever commit. And these things that were mentioned by the speakers, whether smoking at age of 6 or 7, drinking, or prostitution, or engaging in dishonorable acts or jobs, I should say. So we need the international community to know that our problem was 10 years ago, but also our problem has not gone away. They're still present. We still face multiple issues, despite of the international collective efforts to do what can be done for the people who have gone through these genocides. So that's one of the methods. We're still making efforts and awareness through this seminar and many others to make sure that the world is continually are aware of the current situation that the Yazidis have gone through. They hopefully are not forgotten. So thank you very much for the attendance. Great, thank you for organization.
And keep the multi-generational perspective in mind always.
Absolutely. I think one thing is we need to learn from other communities.
Exactly.
You know.
Shireen, darling, you've been so patient. Would you like to share a last word with these wonderful patient attendees? We still have many here. And please unmute.
Okay.
Thank you. شكرا جزيلا لكل شيء. شكرا. Next, I would appreciate if there is more time for the next presentation so that the participants can have more chance to actually express themselves. I think this is one of the issues we need to pay attention to. Thank you very much.
Of course, time is always our boss. I know how you feel, but I hope you also know how important your presentation was, as short as you felt it was. It was very full and very deep, and went not only to the minds of people, but to their hearts, to their soul. So, so don't have any negative feeling. Just know how enriching your presentation was. Thank you. And let's give the last word to, just a second, let's see, to the very young one, to our youngest one. Say if you have the last word today, until next time, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to thank you and everyone else who was here for listening to the Yazidi struggles. One thing I should mention is I think many of you may know that I'm about to publish a book, an English book about my experience in captivity. I was planning to publish it on August 3rd, since it's going to mark the 10th commemoration of the Yazidi genocide. But sadly, I cannot do it because currently I'm facing some legal issues in Canada, because Canada have these weird rules and regulations over prosecuting people who were part of like terrorist organizations, even though if they were victims and they were forced to do some violence acts. So I have no idea when my book will be ready to publish. I need to find some lawyers in Canada to read it to make sure that the Canadian government is not going to prosecute me nor anyone else who I have mentioned in my book over what happened in captivity.
Okay. Keep in touch because we have many Canadian colleagues.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone.
This is what we are here for, exactly. So I want to, in behalf of the working group, on behalf of the ICMGLT, I want to express my deepest appreciation to this incredible bunch of wonderful human beings and professionals who have taught us so much today, way beyond what I thought is possible. So I was tough sometimes, forgive me. I'm so eager for everything to be fantastic, and it was. So God bless you. I look forward to the working of our working group. It's an amazing working group. And to remain in touch with everyone. At the end of this webinar, you will receive the announcement for our upcoming webinar on August 8th. That's exactly before August 9, which is the International Day of the World Indigenous Peoples. On August 8th, we will have an incredible webinar. Two Indigenous experts, one from Canada, one from the United States, will report on all the data-based findings. These two are the really scientists of the area. I assure you, you will learn so much from that is relevant to each one of our groups. You will receive the announcement. Please join that. On the 14th of August, we will have a webinar on the struggle of the Haitian people with their own multi-generational traumatic legacies. And so we go, humbly and with much love. I thank you, and let's speak again very soon. Mwah. Take care. Bye-bye. You too, dear Haida, please be in touch. I wrote you. Okay. Shireen, mwah, for all the beauty you share. Thank you.